The A-League has had its fair share of dot owners, to say the least. One of the first to come to mind for many fans is billionaire and failed politician Clive Palmer, who owned Gold Coast United from 2008 to 2012. During his time as owner, he frequently butted heads with Football Federation Australia and ultimately had his licence stripped in February 2012, with just 4 games remaining, for his frequent breaches of FFA rules and regulations. Then there's the Bakris, the current Indonesian owners of the Brisbane Roar, who have usually spent more time in court for unpaid wages and fees than actually investing in the club. And most recently, we have Jason Sarasis, whose Western Melbourne group own the currently inactive Western United. The group was placed into liquidation in August this year after Sarasis was slapped with a mountain of debts, including a $3 million personal tax bill. More recently, Collingwood Magpies captain Scott Pendlebury took legal action against Sarasis after he failed to repay a $3,000 personal loan. I'm sure we can mention many more. But there's one that's often overlooked. A man that basically became one of Australia's richest people overnight, invested into an A-League club before being left with just $2,000 to his name, all in the space of just a decade. We are, of course, speaking of mining boss Nathan Tinkler and his ill-fated ownership of the Newcastle Jets. Before I go further, I must give a big thanks to our channel members, Robert Manzo, Sean Harding, and Davey Green. All the support is much appreciated. You can also sign up to become a channel member to help support the channel, and you get these videos a couple of days early before they go live to everyone else. Now let's get back into it. Born in 1976 in Inverell, in northern New South Wales, Nathan Tinkler was a qualified electrician at Muswellbrook TAFE in the Hunter Valley. He commenced his involvement in the coal industry as an apprentice electrical fitter at Bayswater Power Station between Muswellbrook and Singleton. In 2002, at the age of just 26, Tinkler had started his own mine machinery maintenance business called Custom Mining. Tinkler got his lucky break in 2006 when he sold almost everything he owned to raise $1 million for the down payment on a lease for the Middlemount coal mine in central Queensland. A year later, he swapped his Middlemount stake for shares in MacArthur Coal, which he sold the following year for $441 million. In 2008, the then 32-year-old was named by the Business Review Weekly magazine as Australia's richest person under the age of 40. In the same year, he purchased the Maules Creek mine deposit in New South Wales for $480 million from Rio Tinto and floated Aston Resources in 2010 with a $1.2 billion valuation. 2 years later, Tinkler again made the Business Review Weekly list as Australia's youngest billionaire, with a claimed net worth of more than $1.18 billion. But without sounding like the Australian Financial Review, why do all these numbers matter? Why does all this background matter? How is it related to the A-League and his ill-fated spell as owner of the Newcastle Jets? Well, we can see that Tinkler got rich fast, and in one way or another, by chance. It was a fortune built entirely on speculation on the value of coal in the ground. Instead of investing the money, the self-made billionaire enjoyed his life in the limelight. And who could blame him? He grew up in a working-class family without any hopes of getting wealth like this. He splashed out cash on day trading, horse racing, private jets, luxury homes in 3 countries, and sports teams, as we'll get to. He became known as a bogonaire, garnering a reputation for someone that didn't deserve his riches, couldn't hold on to his money, and didn't spend it wisely. This would ultimately catch up with him during his tenure as Newcastle Jets owner. But prior to his takeover of the Jets, the club was owned by Con Constantine, and he was in trouble. He was being squeezed by his banks regarding the debts his business empire owed. Constantine, who was born in Cyprus before he migrated to Australia at the age of 10, built Parkley Markets in 1985, which quickly established itself as one of the premier retail destinations in Western Sydney. In later years, his business expanded to Newcastle, where he purchased the Newcastle and Lake Macquarie Post and the Hunter Post newspapers from Fairfax Media. Towards the end of his tenure, though, A-League Chief Executive Ben Buckley was forced to meet with the banks and officials from the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, in an effort to keep at least some of the funds flowing directly to the Jets to pay player wages. But matters came to a head as the 2010-11 season began, when Constantine again struggled to raise funds to pay his players. So the FFA got to work to find a buyer for the Jets, and hired former Stadium Australia boss Ken Edwards to find a buyer. It was no surprise when local businessman Nathan Tinkler's name popped up. According to Paddy Manning's biography, Bogonair, The Rise and Fall of Nathan Tinkler, Tinkler asked Edwards, quote, "How much do you need?" End quote. $2 million was the reply. Tinkler then said it would be a pity to lose the Jets for the sake of just $2 million. He was interested, and after 2 weeks of secret negotiations, in September 2010, the FFA stripped Constantine of his ownership license and transferred the club to Nathan Tinkler. Tinkler and his management team, headed by the then temporary chief executive Ken Edwards, moved quickly to stabilise the Jets. It took only a few weeks for Tinkler to strike a deal with the FFA to buy the Jets outright. He agreed to a fee of $5 million, as he was under the impression that that was the going rate. Months later, the members of the Newcastle Knights voted to privatise the club, and Tinkler became the owner of the proud NRL club. He was ordered to provide a $2 million bank guarantee, which was designed to safeguard the Knights' future should he ever run into financial trouble. If only the Jets had got that kind of deal. Tinkler, though, wasn't worried, and he embarked on a spending spree across several sports. He had plans for a sporting empire that also included basketball, cricket and netball. He had already established a horse racing enterprise in 2008 at Patinack Farm in the Hunter Valley, which became one of Australia's largest locally owned racing organisations, experiencing tremendous success in a short period of time. At the Jets, Tinkler more than doubled the contract of coach Branko Kalina, but the goodwill would ultimately not last between the two. Edwards, meanwhile, created a community advisory board before he developed a membership package that was the cheapest in the A-League. There was free season passes for children under 15, a family pass with a reserved grandstand seat for just $100, and general admission for $10. Over the space of 18 months, the Jets' membership would increase from 500 to 10,000. Tinkler also forked out $1 million to pay for David Beckham's LA Galaxy to visit Newcastle. A crowd of 23,317 turned up to see the Jets down the Galaxy 2-1, one of the biggest attendances seen for a Jets home game. For the coaching staff and players, though, there were doubts. Former central defender Nikolai Topol-Stanley was quoted in John Steinsholt and Sean Mooney's 2015 book A-League, The Inside Story of the Tumultuous First Decade, quote, "There was a lot of talk, but I didn't see a lot of results. In terms of structure and professionalism, it wasn't much different," end quote. The core was hollow, and it would take some time for the public to learn what was really going on at the Jets. But for all they knew, the club was flying. The cracks soon began to appear on the very day the FFA launched the 2011-12 season. Branko Kalina was sensationally sacked by Tinkler after attending the launch, a decision that had its beginning in the transfer of the coach's son Jason from Gold Coast United to the Jets in the off-season. 8 months earlier, the Jets had announced Jason Kalina as the club's marquee player on a three-year deal reportedly worth close to $700,000 per season. But the deal was agreed even after Kalina had injured his knee while playing for the Socceroos. A medical was conducted on Kalina by a Socceroos doctor, and the reports were shared with the Newcastle physician. Yet because this was a pre-existing injury, Newcastle was unable to insure its new player. Kalina worked hard to get back onto the field, but he feared the worst when he felt pain return to his knee and he needed more surgery. But Kalina was told by the Jets not to worry, because they were willing to wait for his return. He went into surgery by himself and paid for everything. And then when he got out, he didn't hear a word from the Jets. Tinkler, meanwhile, had phoned Branko to ask about the contingency plan, given that the $2.1 million marquee player might never kick a ball again. Branko told Tinkler that the Jets could cover it at the moment, but long-term he needed to look at other options. Tinkler was furious, and he sacked both the father and his son, feeling that he had been fooled by an act of nepotism and deceit. To this day, Branko Kalina denies he was responsible for signing his son, a claim supported by the Jets' then advisory board member and Socceroo legend Ray Barthez. The younger Kalina battled for months for compensation, later taking action against the Jets and the FFA, having spent $20,000 on his rehab to get his career back on track. Things began to spiral out of control in July 2012 when Tinkler's Hunter Sports Group, the group that oversaw the running of the Jets, opted to hand back the club's license back to the FFA, citing irreconcilable differences with the FFA. But then FFA boss Ben Buckley said Tinkler had a contract until 2020, and he could not simply hand back his license, and he expected him to honour his commitment. Quoting Buckley, "We are very surprised and very disappointed by the action that's been taken by the Hunter Sports Group. We were only informed of it this morning, about 15 minutes before the press announcement was made. I think if you go back to when the announcement was made that the Hunter Sports Group were going to take on the licence, they made a lot of noise about commitment to football and building football in the community and helping the community of Newcastle more broadly. So I would say to the Hunter Sports Group, they need to review that commitment. They need to honour their obligations, and they need to make sure the people of Newcastle aren't let down." End quote. Buckley refused to rule out the possibility of launching a damages claim against Tinkler that could go as high as $80 million, and ultimately Tinkler held on to his licence for now. He would ultimately re-enter the spotlight in 2015 when the Jets' financial problems got even worse. Having lost most of his billion-dollar fortune due to the slowing mining sector, Tinkler, who is now based in Singapore, had decided before the season to sell the Jets, after losing control of the NRL club, the Newcastle Knights, in 2014. Tinkler tried to find a European buyer, searching for a sale price of the $5 million he had paid for the Jets 5 years prior. There were unsuccessful pitches to then Newcastle United owner Mike Ashley and the Thompson family, the owners of Scottish Premiership club Dundee United. Tinkler would run into trouble over late payments to his creditors, including the Jets. He was forced, under pressure from the FFA, to pay more than $500,000 to several parties, including Football North and New South Wales. But he still received a breach notice from the FFA in February 2015, asking for him to show cause as to why he shouldn't have his licence stripped. In the same month, Tinkler sensationally sacked 5 players in an attempt to prevent a player revolt that aimed to unseat coach Phil Stubbins. Tinkler managed to see out the season, in which the Jets finished last, only for the FFA to move against him after player wages and superannuation went unpaid. Tinkler put the club into voluntary administration, only for the FFA to take back his licence, claiming he had breached his ownership responsibilities. While there were reports of the Jets' debt being $2.17 million when the FFA took the licence back in May 2015, that number jumped to more than $22 million when a creditor's report was lodged a month later. The report revealed that when Tinkler had placed the club into voluntary administration, the Jets had only $605 in the bank, $88 in office petty cash, gym equipment, some outdated merchandise, and a 2009 Hyundai i30. After the FFA took control of the Jets, the governing body held several fan forums in an effort to win back the trust of the disenfranchised fans. A year later, in June 2016, the FFA completed the sale of the club to the Ledman Group, a leading high-tech LED signature manufacturer, operator and sports business based in Shenzhen, China. For Tinkler, well, in February 2016, he was declared bankrupt by the federal court. While his bankruptcy was subsequently annulled in August 2018, it brought an end to Tinkler's rapid rise to billionaire status. It was a decade of investment in mining, but was littered with unchecked spending when it came to sport, horse racing, private jets and mansions. It almost destroyed the Newcastle Jets, and had it not been for the FFA, who stepped in to prop up the club until a new buyer was found, it may have not been around today. Thank you once again for watching our videos. We really appreciate all the support we've been getting over the past year and more. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something new. I hope this reminded you of the period when Tinkler had a club in the A-League. And for all those Jets fans, I'm sure you repress all these memories. I'm sorry to bring up bad times, but it's good to see that the Jets, at least financially, are in a pretty good spot after some pretty not great years. If you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share our content, that would be greatly appreciated. I'll see you in the next video.